So the last thing that I want to tell you is important, and it is about your blogs and your blog proposal. And I'm going to use two people, Michaela and Greta. Thank you both for not offering, but I'm using you anyways, for me to use your work. And I'm just going to, sorry, thank you for waiting. Here we go. Okay. So in your proposal, right, you're looking at describing the message, audience, and persona, all right? And then you are defining your blog's niche, and you are looking for, you were looking for two blogs or more, if you wanted, that are similar but not exactly the same as the blog you're proposing, so you can kind of go back and forth, right? And then and then I'm going to give you, you were meant to review and do a peer review. I'm going to give you feedback. And then for your final draft, you will need to use a professional document design. Like, for example, if you go to your Google Drive and you do a new doc from a template, you have the option to find lots of different reports and things, project proposals that you could use to format. Sorry, I got to go back here to format your final proposal. Okay. Additionally to including what you wrote for and received feedback on for project for the two sections that you did, in your final draft, you'll also add in a title, right, which is the proposed title of your blog, which you can continue to work on until the very last minute. An abstract, and an abstract is, a paragraph that really sort of describes what it is that you're going to be doing in your blog. And you need to have readable fonts, page numbering. If you cited anything, you need to have proper citation of sources here, right? Which is fine. So also you need a reflection in the form of a cover letter, which is also called the self-assessment. What are you most proud of? What were your biggest challenges? What could you do differently? Okay. And so this is what I'm looking for here, which is essentially, how are you understanding through what we've done over the past couple of weeks? And now you've written your review, and you've written, your list sickle, and you've looked at other people's, you have a lot of information. And so, how can you bring that into your blog proposal? Okay. So I'm going to look at, everyone's been doing, as far as I can tell from the work that I've seen, everybody has been doing really great work on their first drafts. There's a couple of things that have come up though, and I just want to look at those right now. So Michaela has done a nice job here in her draft of starting to format, right? And putting in a nice document format here. She has her blog title. She has like a sort of descriptive line here. Until next time, the beginning, middle, and ending of something that seemed like it would last forever. I'm interested, right? Here's her overview, or her abstract, if you want to call it that. And additionally, this overview or abstract can be used in maybe in the about section of your actual Substack blog. So you will start to figure out that as you're building this content, this is all content that you can use over and over again, repeatedly in the rest of your pieces, okay? So Michaela is, her blog is about relationships, particularly the endings of relationships. This is a good blog selection, right, or subject, because relationships are constantly ending, and And everyone needs relationship advice, okay? So, what she wants to do is to offer advice for people whose relationships have ended or are ending. Um, she hopes that her page would be a source of healing, and so they can, move forward with their lives. I love that. That sounds good. All right. So, one of the things that she's mentioning is message. This is something that I noticed people got a little bit confused. Okay. The message of your blog is not your content, right? The review, the listicle, the podcast, any of the posts that go on your blog, that is your content. That is not your message. Okay. The message is the meaning that you have as a writer that got you to start writing this blog in the first place. What are you trying to convey to your reader, right? Through this blog, through your content. Okay. And so Michaela wrote that message is this sort of the central theme the writer is trying to convey to the reader. Okay. And she's really thinking, I want this to be a place of healing, right? So that the ending of, a relationship does not have to be the end of the world. It can be a place of healing. It can be a source of healing. It can be a source of growth. That's great. You could really move that through an entire blog for a very long time, right? You could see how she could take that message over time through a podcast, through a listicle, through a review. She's thinking about doing this in a couple ways. She has a couple angles, okay? And one of the angles that she has is poetry. So she's interested in working with poetry, okay? Because that's something that she really likes. So I'm like, okay, that's an interesting idea, right? So, and she says that, let's see, where is it? Through poetry. So she's thinking about, how do I use poetry to maybe work with people on this through my messaging? Okay, I like that. And then she's thinking about, what is my persona? And she's got her persona here as the writerly persona that I wish to adopt for my Substack blog is a big sister. This is a good persona concept. It's very clear, right? When I think about what a big sister, voice would be, or what a big sister persona would be, I think of something comes to mind, and she defines it here. She says, being the oldest of 4 kids, I've naturally taken on the role of being the one to give advice to my younger siblings. Awesome. So she says it's going to be empathetic and compassionate while being informative. That's her voice. That's the voice of her persona, but the persona is her as a big sister. Now, Michaela is probably many other things as a person. Maybe she is, in addition to being a big sister, she is, I don't know, a master chef. So she could take on the persona as a master chef giving relationship advice. I mean, you think, wait, can you do that? And I say, yes, you can. Okay. The voice of a master chef would be maybe very foodie language, making a lot of food-like metaphors for the endings and the beginnings of relationships. Maybe kind of like authoritative in the kitchen, there's a fire in the kitchen, you got to put the fire out, right? Things like that. Okay. So if Michaela was a master chef, in addition to being a big sister in her life, right, and the other things that she is, she could maybe take on that master chef persona. Or maybe she just likes to cook, and she, either one is fine. But what she's doing is she's saying, okay, this is a part of me that I can kind of hang on to, and I'm going to take that part of me and I'm going to make it my persona for this blog. I'm going to make this the character that I play while I'm writing this blog. And that character helps to develop the voice, the tone, the style of writing, and it creates a type of a consistency throughout the entire blog, okay? So I wanted to show you Greta's proposal as well here, where Greta has gotten so much good stuff right here. For example, a message is the meaning the writer wants their readers to grasp from their blog, an important focus that underpins all the content that they post on the blog. Yes, okay. So one of the things that Greta got really right is audience. And this is also something that a lot of people were kind of missing, or that was a little bit soft, right? Audience is more than just anyone reading your blog. Exactly. Anyone can pick up, anyone can pick up this newspaper, right? And read it and be like, oh, okay, that's cute, whatever. That does not mean that person is the audience for this particular newspaper, right? The audience for this particular newspaper is has been really thought through by the people who are creating the content that is in this little newspaper, right? They've thought about who's going to be interested in what goes into this newspaper. What kind of images do we want to pick? What kind of language? What kind of font, right? All of those things have gone into thinking about what would appeal to the particular audience of this little newspaper, right? Same thing for your blog, all right? Your audience is a specific type of person that your blog content specifically caters to. I would also say, not only is it the type of person, it is a community, a type of community that your blog content caters to, right? So here, we might assume that the audience, I'm just going to make assumptions here. The audience for this little newspaper would be maybe fashion forward, young people between the ages of 15 and 35 that are looking for interesting, cool ideas for summer. I don't know. And things to do on the weekend. That's what I'm going to say. Okay. That's my audience. There's a little demographic in there. I'm getting an idea of who the audience is. And from there, I can go layer by layer by layer and really select different audiences, different communities, and start to really dial in on who would be interested in reading my blog. Greta notes that her audience is likely young adults, 18 to 35 years old, that have a passion for coffee or at least an interest in it. They want to know where the best spot in town is for a specific drink that they like. Greta's done a really good job of identifying an audience profile here, right? And how is she going to draw readers in? How is she going to draw her audience in? So this is what I want to see for you guys when you're working on shaping your audience a little bit more is, don't be, really be specific as you can as to who your audience is. What are the different communities that might be interested? I'm thinking college students. I'm thinking young professionals. I'm thinking people that live by the beach. I'm thinking, these are all different communities, people interested in fashion, right? These are all your different potential audiences that you could then, when you have your blog going, you can find ways to engage with these communities and send your newsletters and build your audiences. However, as I was reading Greta's persona, this is where she got it a little bit wrong. And thank you, Greta, for getting it wrong, because it gives me a really good example for everybody. Persona refers to the typical person that represents your audience. This is incorrect, okay? This actually is an audience profile. So an audience profile is a thorough fictional description of a person that would likely be reading your content. Yes, this is basically an audience profile is another step into trying to figure out who your audience is, and then to think, how might I connect with this person, right? So Greta did an awesome job of thinking through an audience profile. She's thought through, like, how is a drink made? This person lives in the Santa Barbara area. They like to treat themselves to a fun coffee drink. The best way to communicate with this person would be, this way and this, right? So this is correct in terms of an audience profile, but it is incorrect in terms of what a persona is when we are speaking about your blog and your persona for your blog, okay? So your persona for your blog goes back to what we talked about with Michaela's big sister persona for her relationship blog, okay? And in this case, Greta would need to ask herself, what is my persona gonna be as a blogger writing about different specialty coffee drinks that you can get from coffee shops in Santa Barbara? So she knows that she wants to inform the readers about coffee and tea and foster in them a similar love of beverages. She knows her audience, she knows her message, right? So she knows a lot of things. Now she has to decide, what's my persona? Am I going to be an enthusiastic, hyped up, caffeinated, college student coffee lover in Santa Barbara, right? Maybe I am not that. Maybe I am actually a very shy, quiet person who finds it hard to meet people. And so I like to go to coffee shops and observe people. And so this is how I know all of the good coffee shops in Santa Barbara, because I kind of am like the fly on the wall that goes around and like observes and then like writes about everybody, right? That sounds really fun. Or you could take on the persona of someone who maybe is like a writer and really likes to go to coffee shops to write. And so, your persona is this writer that goes to coffee shops to write. And now, because of that, you have all of, this information on awesome coffees and coffee shops. And so you're writing a blog about it. Okay. But all of those have to be something that is a part of Greta. And I don't know Greta, so I can't say that any of that is her. She has to say that for herself, but those would be options. One thing I wanted to show you is this great Substack that I love, and I'll post a link to it. The blog is called Hola Papi, and it's on Substack. It's written by John Paul Brommer. Okay. And he writes an advice column. It used to be, I think, on the Washington Post. And then he took his regular column and he moved it to Substack. Okay. So I get this newsletter from him. And his newsletter is called Hola Papi. And it says, it is the preeminent deranged advice column. So we know what the blog is. It is a preeminent deranged advice column from writer and author John Paul Brommer. Great. Okay. He could use something else. He could say from comedian and relationship failure, John Paul Brommer, right? Like, so different words. Now living on Substack. It says, if you've ever wanted advice from a Twitter-addled gay Mexican with anxiety, that is his persona. Okay, a Twitter-addled gay Mexican with anxiety. And that comes through in the language that he's using here. It comes through in the title of his blog, Hola Papi, right? And it comes through in his language and his tone as he responds to the questions that people ask him. So yes, of course, this is tongue-in-cheek. It's funny in a lot of ways, but he's also very authentic. He's a very smart writer. He talks about a lot of issues that are more sort of, I would say, queer-centric. So even if you're not, on the queer spectrum, you definitely will still be, learning about relationships through his responses, right? And I'm going to read just a little bit here. He says, this is a question from someone who has a great life, but can't shake the notion that I'm going to wake up one day and be 80 years old and feel like I've wasted my life. Okay. Signed, Unbearably Average. And Brahmer writes, hey there, UA. First of all, I'm not sure what about having a stable job and living in a house is normal. That sounds incredibly exotic to me. To me as a Twitter-addled gay Mexican with anxiety, right? That sounds incredibly exotic to me. Accounting for inflation and the fact that the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse are presently doing donuts on humanity, you're living an alternative lifestyle. What will you do next? Plant a garden, dig a pond in your backyard, fire up the grill? Freak. In all sincerity, before you show up bald to Argentina with a broken arm, I think we should discuss the relative nature of excitement. Regardless of how we spend our time, our minds settle back down to a baseline. My abuelo might look at my life and see the Joker, but gay, while your average Gen Z Brooklynite who parties every night and pumps out viral TikToks might see me as a twee watercolor shrew living in a mushroom. Be we daredevils or bureaucrats, we have a way of constructing our own normal and then sticking pretty close to it. So he goes on, right? But can you see how, even in just these few paragraphs, there's a tone. It is a little bit, it's definitely funny. I wouldn't say necessarily sarcastic, but there's a sharpness to it, right? Sharpness to the humor. It's definitely like culturally on point. I'd say he's making a lot of cultural references that are of the moment in the zeitgeist, right? The language is really fun. Like, I love this, like a twee watercolor shrew living in a mushroom. I mean, I love that, right? Like, so great language that's really fresh and fun, but also offering authentic thoughts and advice, right? Be we daredevils or bureaucrats, we have a way of constructing our own normal and then sticking pretty close to it, right? That's a great line. That's very straightforward and authentic. He's delivering his message, right, throughout about giving advice, right? Advice about life. And so, if you continue to read more, he has just always really great advice, really great writing, but his persona comes through very clearly. And so as you start to work on your blogs, as you start to revise your proposal, as you start to shape your content, really think about, how do you make your food blog or sports blog or coffee blog or whatever? How do you make it different from everyone else's? Who are you, right? What little things can you point out about yourself and pick out that can make a little persona? And the thing is about John Paul Brahmer, which is really interesting, is that he's more than just a twiddle-addled gay Mexican with anxiety. In fact, he's actually an amazing artist. He's a graphic artist, and he writes about, let's see if he writes, I don't think I can find it right now. He writes a lot about trauma. He writes about dating. He writes about politics. He writes some really awesome cultural critique. He writes also about his own Yeah, writing here. Okay. And so he talks about his own writing. And I'm not finding it here. Here we go. He talks about who he is as an illustrator as well, right? And here he is, he says, this is really exciting for me because it's my first illustrated magazine cover and it's the first award I've won for making one. Look at these guys. I'm so proud of them. So in addition to Hola Papi being an advice blog, it's also a lot more because it's about him, it's about his persona. And over the time that he's had this blog, he has really developed himself and his, I want to say brand, but it's more like who he is as a writer and an artist through his Substack page. Okay. And actually, I'm just going to read this to you and then I'm going to end because I know I've been talking for a long time. But it says, about Hola Papi. It started as a joke. What if Dear Abby was a gay Mexican man on Grindr? Hola Papi was meant to be a satirical take on the advice column. To be frank, I found the idea of a stranger on the internet doling out wisdom to be pretty ridiculous, right? I launched the column at Grindr's media outlet Into in 2017 with the intent of fashioning myself as a kind of rodeo clown in the advice giving space. But then something unexpected happened. As it turns out, Grindr is a place full of people looking for connection. My column was sent out through the app all over the world, and the response was overwhelming. I got hundreds of letters expressing loneliness, letters about coming out to unaccepting jobs, family and friends, letters about breakups and move to new cities and unfulfilling job. I realized pretty quickly that I had stumbled upon an important and underserved niche. I had the opportunity, however small, to speak directly to my community, to make people feel heard, and hopefully say something in reply that they might find useful. I was still going to crack jokes, though. That's Hola Papi. Okay, so this whole thing is kind of an abstract. It's kind of an about. It's kind of an explanation, and it's definitely a persona, as well as a message and a purpose. Okay, so as you're doing your revisions, as you're thinking about your blogs, consider how you might think about, these underserved niches. How do you speak to your community or audience, right? And how do you find your own voice? So yeah, look forward to seeing you all at some point this next week, and come with questions. Thanks so much. Have a good one.